The night was cold and empty on the edge of the forgotten mining moon called Verna 9. Broken towers of metal stood like bones in the dust, whispering in the wind. No ships came here anymore, no miners, no traders, only ghosts and silence. High above the gray surface, a small human ship drifted through the thin clouds. Its pilot, Ethan Cole, was just another man trying to survive in a cruel galaxy. He was not a hero, not a soldier, just a tired cargo pilot who took whatever jobs he could find. His ship, the Starhawk, had seen better days. The engines hissed, the fuel lines leaked, and the screens blinked with warning lights, but she still flew. And that was enough for him. Ethan was scanning for old wrecks, searching for anything valuable he could sell: metal scraps, power cells, even food packs left behind by miners. But then his comm system crackled. A weak, broken voice cut through the static. "Please. Help. Human. Help us." He froze. It wasn't a human voice. It was smaller, softer, like a child. Ethan adjusted the receiver, trying to clear the signal. The voice came again, this time clearer, trembling like a scared heartbeat. "Please, human. They locked my mother in a cage. Please." Ethan's stomach tightened. He looked around the empty surface below. The radar showed no life signs, no ships, nothing. But the voice continued to call, desperate and weak. He turned on the scanner again. A faint energy pulse appeared near the old mining tunnels deep under the surface. He should have ignored it. He could have turned away and gone back to his safe route. But he didn't. "Hang on, kid," he said softly. "I'm coming." The Starhawk landed in a swirl of gray dust. The ramp opened and cold air rushed in. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and plasma pistol and stepped outside. The silence was heavy, broken only by the wind moaning between the ruins. His boots crunched on shattered metal and cracked glass. He followed the signal to a collapsed mining entrance. The metal doors were half buried in dust, but the scanner said the signal was below. He forced the doors open with a groan of rust and squeezed inside. The tunnels were dark and narrow, lit only by the flicker of his light. Old warning signs hung on the walls, written in both human and alien language. "Danger. Radiation zone. Keep out." Ethan's breath fogged inside his helmet. The deeper he went, the colder it got. Then he saw it, small footprints in the dust. Tiny, claw-shaped. "Not human, kid," he called quietly. "Can you hear me?" A small voice echoed back from the shadows. "Here." "Please hurry. They will come back." Ethan's pulse quickened. He turned a corner, and there she was. A small alien girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, crouched beside a broken vent. Her skin was pale silver, and her big violet eyes glowed faintly in the dark. She wore torn fabric and a metal collar that hummed weakly. When she saw Ethan, she froze. Then slowly she whispered, "You're human." He nodded. "Yeah, you're the one who called me." Tears welled in her eyes. She pointed down the tunnel with shaking fingers. "They took my mother. She's in a cage. Please help her." Ethan knelt down beside her. "Who took her?" "The soldiers," she said, her voice trembling. "They say she is dangerous, but she didn't hurt anyone. She only sang to the stars." Ethan frowned. "Soldiers. That meant this place wasn't as forgotten as he thought." "All right, kid," he said. "Show me the way." They moved deeper into the tunnels, past broken machines and glowing blue crystals that pulsed like heartbeats. Every sound made the child flinch. Ethan kept his weapon ready, his light scanning the walls. Finally, they reached a chamber filled with metal cages. Some were empty. In one of them, behind energy bars, sat a tall alien woman with the same silver skin and violet eyes. She was weak, but when she saw the child, she smiled faintly. "Mother," the girl cried, running to the cage. The woman reached through the bars, touching her daughter's face. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They'll come back soon." Ethan stepped forward. "We're getting you out." Before the woman could answer, the tunnel lights flashed red. A siren wailed through the chamber. Mechanical doors slammed shut behind them. "They found us," the woman said, fear in her eyes. The ground shook as heavy boots approached. Ethan's heart raced. He raised his pistol, shielding the child behind him. "Stay close," he said. The first group of alien soldiers appeared through the smoke, tall, armored, and armed with plasma rifles. One of them shouted, "Human! Step away from the prisoner!" Ethan's jaw tightened. His finger hovered over the trigger. He looked at the terrified child, then at her mother trapped behind the bars. And in that single heartbeat, he made his choice. The red warning lights painted the tunnel walls in harsh crimson flashes, making everything feel alive, like the mine itself was breathing danger. Ethan stood still, heart pounding as the armored soldiers stepped closer. Their helmets gleamed in the flickering light, and the glow from their plasma rifles shimmered like fire. The small alien child clung to his leg, her trembling hand gripping his worn flight jacket. "Step away from the cage, human," one soldier barked, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "This prisoner is property of the Dominion." Ethan's mind raced. Property? His stomach turned at the word. The woman inside the cage, weak, pale, and still, was someone's mother, not property. Her silver skin was bruised, her eyes dull from exhaustion, yet she looked straight at him with quiet strength. "I said, step away," the soldier shouted again. Ethan's hand tightened around his blaster. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He had seen what wars did to people, and he had sworn never to fight again. But right now, that promise felt like dust. "She's not property," he said quietly. "She's a person." The soldier raised his weapon. Last warning. Ethan fired first. The sound exploded through the tunnels, plasma against armor, sparks flying in every direction. The first soldier fell and chaos followed. Ethan grabbed the child and dove behind a metal console as energy bolts burned the air around them. The cage hummed with power, trapping the mother inside as she shouted, "Go! Save my daughter!" But Ethan wasn't leaving anyone behind. He leaned out, fired twice more, and hit the control panel beside the cage. Sparks burst and the bars flickered before disappearing completely. The mother stumbled out, falling to her knees. Ethan ran to her, pulling her up. "Can you walk?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, but they'll send more." He looked back at the child. "We need to move now." Together, the three of them raced through the tunnels. The alarms screamed and distant explosions shook the ground. Ethan guided them toward the main shaft, using his map scanner to find an exit. "What's your name?" he asked the woman as they ran. "Seraphis," she whispered, her breath uneven. "My daughter's name is Lyra." "Ethan," he replied quickly. "Don't stop running, Seraphis." They turned a corner and came face to face with another squad of soldiers. This group was heavier armored, and their commander wore a black visor that glowed red. "End of the line, human," the commander sneered. "Return the fugitives, and your death will be painless." Ethan smirked slightly. "You think I'm scared of you?" The commander's armor hummed. "You should be." Before Ethan could react, Seraphis raised her hand. A strange blue light shimmered around her fingers, and a wave of energy rippled through the air. The soldiers staggered back, clutching their helmets as their visors cracked and lights flickered. Ethan stared in shock. "What was that?" Seraphis's eyes glowed brighter now. "A memory song," she said softly. "They will forget what they saw. For a while." Lyra tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "She used to sing to heal people," she said proudly. "But they called it dangerous." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then dangerous is what we need." They pushed past the fallen soldiers and reached an old lift shaft. Ethan forced the controls open and started the platform. The machinery screamed from years of rust but began to move. As the platform rose, Seraphis looked at Ethan with curiosity and pain. "You risk your life for strangers," she said. "Why?" Ethan didn't answer for a long moment. His eyes stayed fixed on the tunnel above. "Because someone once saved mine. I owe that debt to the universe." Seraphis tilted her head. "You humans. You fight for others even when you're broken." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, guess that's our curse and our gift." The lift stopped with a jolt near the surface. The hatch above them opened into the stormy night sky. But as Ethan climbed out first, he froze. Hovering above the mining field were three dark ships, sleek, silent, and deadly. Spotlights swept the ground. One of the ships sent out a booming voice through speakers. "This is Commander Var of the Dominion. Return the Queen and her child, and you will be spared." Ethan turned sharply toward Seraphis. "Queen?" She looked away, guilt shadowing her face. "They were right to call me prisoner," she said softly. "I am the last queen of the Aris Dominion." Before it fell, Ethan exhaled slowly. "You didn't mention that part." "I didn't think you'd help if you knew," she whispered. "Humans don't fight for lost empires." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, then smiled grimly. "I don't care who you are. You're a mother. That's enough." The ships began to descend, the air roaring with engines. Ethan ran toward the Starhawk, his ship resting half buried in the dust. He lifted Seraphis aboard and then carried Lyra up the ramp. "Hold on," he shouted as he powered the engines. Plasma bolts rained down from the sky, lighting up the storm clouds. The Starhawk shook as it lifted off, climbing higher and higher through the chaos. Seraphis held her daughter close, whispering words in a strange alien tongue. Ethan gritted his teeth, flying through the storm as the enemy ships followed. "Let's see if this old bird still has some fight left," he muttered. Outside, lightning struck across the sky, painting the clouds in blue fire. The Starhawk vanished into the storm, chased by fire carrying a secret that could shake the galaxy itself. The sky above Verna 9 was alive with chaos. Lightning tore across the clouds, painting them in bright silver flashes, while the Starhawk darted between them like a wounded bird. Ethan's hands gripped the flight controls tightly. The ship's engines screamed under the pressure, warning lights flashing red across the console. Behind him, the alien mother, Seraphis, clutched her daughter Lyra, whispering calming words as the little girl cried. "Hold tight," Ethan shouted, steering hard as plasma fire streaked past the window. One blast grazed the hull, sending sparks flying. The smell of burning metal filled the cabin. Lyra buried her face in her mother's arms. "They're going to catch us," she sobbed. Ethan forced a grin even as sweat rolled down his temple. "Not if I can help it." He slammed a switch, activating the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, slicing through the storm clouds. Outside, 3 enemy ships followed in formation, their red lights glowing like demons in the dark. The storm wasn't natural. It was an old weather control field, still active from the mining days. Electricity danced between clouds, powerful enough to rip ships apart. Ethan used it to his advantage, diving low through thunder and static. Seraphis looked out the window, her eyes glowing faintly. "You're flying into death, human," Ethan smirked. "That's what they said the last time I survived something stupid." The Starhawk shook violently as lightning struck close. Power flickered for a second, the control panels dimming. Ethan hit them with his fist and the lights came back to life. "We're fine," he muttered through clenched teeth. Totally fine. But he wasn't. One look at the radar told him the truth. The Dominion ships were gaining. Their systems were faster, their weapons more advanced. He needed a plan, and fast. "Seraphis," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "You said you were a queen. You got any tricks up your sleeve?" She closed her eyes for a moment, her hands glowing with soft blue light. The ship's interior trembled as if reacting to her energy. "I can shield us for a few moments," she whispered. "But it will drain me." "Do it," Ethan said. "Just keep us alive." A faint hum filled the cabin as Seraphis began to sing. Her voice was strange, soft and ancient, echoing like a melody from another world. Blue light spread across the hull, forming a shimmering aura. When the next plasma blast hit, it scattered harmlessly across the energy field like rain on glass. Lyra opened her eyes, amazed. "Mama, it's beautiful." Seraphis smiled weakly. "It's an old Eris song. We once used it to protect our children during storms." Ethan's eyes softened for a second. "Remind me to buy that song when this is over." But the moment didn't last. The energy shield began to flicker, and Seraphis fell back in her seat, exhausted. The lights dimmed and alarms blared again. The Dominion ships were closing in fast. "Shields down," Ethan muttered. "We're going dark." He cut the main power. The Starhawk instantly went silent, drifting through the storm. The radar went blank. Without heat or power, they were invisible, but also falling. The ship tumbled through the clouds, lightning flashing inches away. Ethan's knuckles turned white as he tried to steady the controls manually. Lyra screamed. "We're falling!" Ethan gritted his teeth. "No, we're landing." "Big difference." The ship hit the upper atmosphere of the nearby gas moon, where the storms were thickest. The engines coughed, caught fire, then reignited. The fall steadied. They slipped between 2 massive lightning strikes hidden from their pursuers. Minutes later, the radar blips disappeared one by one. The Dominion ships flew past, scanning the wrong region. The storm had swallowed the Starhawk whole. Silence filled the cockpit. Only the sound of rain tapping against the hull remained. Ethan leaned back, exhaling deeply. "We're clear." "For now." Seraphis opened her eyes, her breathing heavy. "You're reckless, human," he smiled faintly. "And you're welcome." Lyra peeked up, her small face glowing in the dim light. "Are we safe now?" Ethan looked at her, then at the blinking fuel gauge. Safe-ish. He turned off the autopilot and guided the ship toward a cluster of floating rocks, remnants of an ancient mining station drifting near the storm's edge. They looked abandoned, but they'd make a good hiding spot. As they approached, Seraphis looked through the window, her expression filled with sadness. "I once ruled planets," she said softly. "Now I'm hiding in rocks." Ethan glanced at her. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is survive." The Starhawk settled into a hollow in one of the asteroids, engines cooling with a long sigh. Inside the quiet cabin, the tension slowly faded. Lyra curled up and fell asleep in her mother's arms. Ethan sat across from them, staring out at the storm outside. "They won't stop looking for you, will they?" Seraphis shook her head. "No, they fear what I represent. If the people learn I live, they might rise again." Ethan thought for a moment. "Then we don't just run. We make them chase the wrong trail." She raised an eyebrow. "You have a plan?" He grinned. "Not yet. But I'm very good at annoying powerful people." Seraphis let out a quiet laugh for the first time. "Then maybe the galaxy needs more humans like you." Outside, the lightning danced across the horizon like war drums echoing in the dark. Inside the tiny ship, a new bond had been born, a human pilot, an alien queen, and a frightened child bound by one desperate promise: to survive the storm and change the fate of worlds. The storm outside had finally calmed, leaving the asteroid field cloaked in silence. Only faint flashes of lightning lit the endless dark beyond the cockpit glass. Inside the Starhawk, the air was still thick with tension and the smell of scorched metal. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, quietly repairing the ship's power relays, while Seraphis and her daughter Lyra rested in the small cargo bay. It had been hours since the escape, but Ethan's heart still hadn't slowed. Every noise made him glance at the scanner. Every flicker of light made him fear another Dominion patrol. He tightened a loose wire and sighed. "Well, that was officially the dumbest thing I've ever done," he muttered. "And that list is long." From behind him, a calm voice answered, "Sometimes the foolish things are what change the universe." He turned. Seraphis was standing near the door, wrapped in a blanket, her silver skin reflecting the dim blue lights of the ship. Even after days of imprisonment, she carried herself with quiet grace, as if no chain could truly break her. Ethan leaned back. "You should be resting, Your Majesty," she smiled faintly. "So you know now." "I heard the broadcast," he said. "Return the Queen and her child. Hard to miss." Seraphis walked closer, her gaze distant. "I didn't want you to know. The title brings danger. People hear Queen and stop seeing a person, they see a symbol." Ethan shrugged. "I don't care if you're a queen, a farmer, or a space mechanic. You're just someone who needed help." She looked at him with surprise, as if no one had said that to her in years. "Most would have turned away," she said softly. "Even your own kind fear the Dominion's name." "Maybe," Ethan replied, "but fears never stopped me from doing something stupid before." A faint laugh escaped her lips. It was soft, musical, almost human. For a moment, the weight in the air lifted. Then Lyra stirred from her sleep, rubbing her eyes. "Mama," she whispered, "are we going home now?" Seraphis knelt beside her, smoothing her hair gently. "Not yet, my starshine. Home is far away," the child frowned. "But the human will take us, right?" Ethan hesitated, looking at them both. "I'll get you as far from those soldiers as I can," he said. "But where exactly is home?" Seraphis was silent for a long moment before answering. "It was called Alaris Prime, the heart of our empire. They burned it when I refused to surrender our people. They said a ruler without chains was a danger to order." Ethan's jaw tightened. "So they locked you up for being free?" "Yes," she said quietly. "And they will do worse if they find me again." Ethan crossed his arms. "Then we'll make sure they don't." Seraphis looked at him curiously. "You speak as if you have the power to hide a queen from an empire." He grinned. "I don't, but I've got a ship that's uglier than most asteroids." "That's close enough." Lyra giggled, and even Seraphis smiled. But then the scanner beeped, a single soft ping. Ethan froze. "What is it?" Seraphis asked. "Something's nearby," he said, narrowing his eyes at the display. "A ship, small, maybe a probe." Seraphis frowned. "They've found us." "Maybe," Ethan said. "Or maybe it's bait." He powered down the external lights and switched the ship to stealth mode. The engines hummed quietly. Through the viewport, a faint glimmer appeared. A drone scanning the rocks. It floated slowly, searching for life signs. Ethan whispered, "If that thing transmits our location, the fleet will be here in minutes." Seraphis closed her eyes, her hands glowing faintly again. "I can stop it." "Wait," Ethan warned. If you use your power again, it's the only way, she interrupted. Before he could argue, she stepped closer to the viewport. Her eyes burned bright violet and a soft tone filled the air. The glass shimmered like ripples in water. Outside, the drone froze midair. Its lights flickered once, twice, and then went dark, drifting lifelessly into the black. Ethan stared. Remind me not to make you angry. Seraphis looked pale, gripping the wall for support. It's not anger, she said weakly. It's memory. My songs speak to machines the way they once spoke to hearts. He caught her before she fell. Hey, take it easy. She looked up at him, her voice soft. You risked everything for a stranger. Why? Ethan hesitated. His eyes wandered to the sleeping Lyra. Because I've seen what happens when people stop caring. I couldn't watch that again. She studied him for a long time, then whispered, You humans. You burn so brightly, even in the dark, he smiled. That's probably why we die so young. The moment hung there, quiet, fragile, real. Then the silence was broken by the soft hum of engines somewhere in the distance. Ethan's expression hardened. They're back, he said, checking the radar. And this time it's not just a drone. Seraphis rose unsteadily, her voice calm. Then we must move again, Ethan nodded. Yeah, but we won't just run. She looked at him, puzzled. What do you mean? He smirked. We hit them first, Seraphis blinked. You plan to attack the Dominion? With this broken ship? Ethan tapped the side of the Starhawk. She may be old, but so am I, and both of us are too stubborn to die quietly. Seraphis gazed at him for a long moment, half in disbelief, half in admiration. Perhaps, she whispered. This is why humans frighten even the stars. Outside, the enemy's searchlights began to pierce the dark once more. But inside the Starhawk, a new light burned brighter, the spark of defiance, shared between a weary human and a fallen queen. The galaxy didn't know it yet. But the fight for freedom had just been reborn. The hum of the approaching ships filled the air like a heartbeat of doom. Through the cracked viewport of the Starhawk, Ethan could see faint glimmers of light far beyond the asteroid belt. The Dominion had found them again. 3 war cruisers, armored and merciless, moving in a slow, tightening formation. Ethan stood from the pilot's seat, his expression calm but his pulse sharp. They're not searching anymore, he said. They're hunting. Seraphis stepped beside him, her eyes following the lights in the dark. They won't stop, she whispered. They believe fear keeps the galaxy obedient. Then maybe it's time someone scared them back, Ethan said. The Queen turned her gaze toward him. You speak like a soldier, human. I'm not, he said. Not anymore. He paused, staring at the enemy ships growing larger. But I remember how to fight when I have to. He walked toward the back of the ship, opening an old cargo compartment. Inside were dusty crates, rusted tools, and a few forgotten energy cells. He tossed one to Seraphis. You said your people sang to machines, he said. Think you can make these old turrets remember how to work? Seraphis smiled faintly. If your machines still have hearts, yes. Good, he said. Because I'm not going down without giving them a memory they'll regret. Hours later, the Starhawk rested on a rocky plateau of a nearby moon, an abandoned human outpost surrounded by silent towers and buried cables. The place was old, built before the Dominion had conquered this sector. Now it would become something new, a stand, not a grave. Ethan worked without rest, setting up the defense turrets, recharging shield coils, and repairing the main cannon. His hands were cut and burned, but he didn't care. Each spark, each noise kept his focus sharp. Lyra followed him quietly, carrying tools far too heavy for her small frame. Why do you fight? She asked softly. There are too many. Ethan looked at her, sweat on his brow. Because someone has to. But you're alone, she said. He smiled gently. Not anymore. Seraphis approached, her gown torn and dusty, but her presence still carried a strange grace. The defense grid is almost ready, she said. But even if it works, it won't hold for long. Ethan shrugged. Doesn't have to. Just long enough. For what? She asked. To send a message, he said. If they think one human can't fight back, let's prove them wrong. Seraphis studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Then I'll stand with you. She placed her hand on one of the turrets, whispering in her ancient tongue. Blue light spread through the metal, and the gun hummed to life. It remembers, she said softly. Your machines. They still want to protect, Ethan smiled. Then let's give them a reason. When the Dominion ships broke through the clouds, the night turned to fire. Massive beams of plasma streaked across the sky, striking the ground and exploding into pillars of light. The Starhawk's shields flared, shaking with each hit. Ethan sat in the cockpit, gripping the controls. "All right, you bastards," he muttered. "Let's dance," the ship's cannons roared. Blue plasma bolts cut through the darkness, striking one of the enemy gunships square in the engines. The explosion lit up the horizon. "Direct hit," Lyra shouted from behind him, her eyes wide with awe. "Don't celebrate yet," Ethan yelled. "Two more coming in." The second ship dropped lower, unleashing a rain of missiles. Ethan pulled hard on the controls, weaving through the chaos. The Starhawk groaned, one engine coughing smoke. Seraphis gripped the back of his seat. "Ethan, if we stay here, we die." "Then we don't stay," he said. He spun the ship toward the cliffs, diving low between the canyons. The Dominion cruisers followed, their weapons lighting up the night. The Starhawk's shadow danced over the rock walls as Ethan guided them through tight turns only a human pilot could dare. Lyra clung to her mother. "He's crazy!" she cried. Seraphis smiled faintly. "No, he's human." Ethan hit a switch on his console. "Hold on." A string of charges he'd planted earlier detonated along the canyon walls. The explosion sent debris crashing down, slamming into the pursuing ships. One was crushed instantly. The other spun out of control, colliding with the rocks below. Only one enemy ship remained. Ethan turned toward Seraphis. "You said your people sang to heal," he said. "Can you sing to destroy?" Her eyes glowed faintly. "Only if you give me your strength to guide it." He nodded. "Take whatever you need." She placed her hand on his shoulder and began to sing. The sound was unlike anything he'd heard. Soft, endless, filled with sorrow and light. The air shimmered, and the Starhawk's energy field pulsed like a heartbeat. The last Dominion ship locked its weapons on them, but before it could fire, the Queen's song reached it. Its metal shell twisted, engines flickering, lights dying one by one. Then in silence, the warship exploded, disappearing into a cloud of blue fire. The night went quiet again. Only the wind whispered through the canyons. Ethan exhaled, leaning back. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Seraphis looked pale but calm. "You gave me your strength," she said softly. "Together we became something the Dominion has not seen in centuries." "What's that?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Hope," Lyra smiled, her small hand reaching for his. "You saved us, human," Ethan chuckled tiredly. "No, kid. We saved us." He looked at the smoking horizon, at the wreckage glowing faintly under the stars. "But they'll come again," he murmured. "And next time they'll bring more." Seraphis nodded. "Then we must be ready. The galaxy will hear what happened here tonight." Ethan stared at the distant lights of the stars and smiled. "Good," he said quietly. "Let them know one human decided to stand." The next dawn was painted in the colors of war. From the high cliffs of the abandoned moon, Ethan watched the horizon glow with the faint red shimmer of incoming fleets. The Dominion was not retreating. They were returning, stronger and angrier. The battle the night before had been a spark, but now, that spark had drawn the storm. Inside the Starhawk, Seraphis sat near the central console, her hands trembling slightly as she tuned into distant frequencies. Her voice was quiet but firm. "They are broadcasting across sectors. The Dominion calls you a terrorist, Ethan Cole. They say you've stolen royal property." Ethan smirked. "Royal property? That's one way to say I saved a mother and child." "They twist the truth," she murmured. "It is what they do best." He turned toward her. "Then maybe it's time someone told a better story." Her eyes softened. "You truly believe one man can stand against an empire?" Ethan tightened the strap on his flight jacket. "One man's not enough. But one act, that's how revolutions start." Outside, thunder echoed, not from storms this time, but from ships breaking through the upper atmosphere. Their silver hulls reflected the sun, casting long shadows over the cliffs. The Dominion fleet was massive. Dozens of destroyers and drone carriers, each armed with more firepower than entire colonies. Lyra pressed her face to the viewport, her small voice trembling. "There are so many." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Yeah, too many to fight. So we don't fight them their way." He looked to Seraphis. "You said your people had old relay towers, something that reached other systems?" She nodded slowly. "The Singers Network. We used it to send our songs across the stars before they silenced us." Can it still work? He asked, her lips curved into a faint smile. If I can reach one beacon, yes. My voice will carry farther than any Dominion lie. Then that's our mission, Ethan said. We don't win here, we make them listen. They left the outpost behind as the sky began to burn. Plasma fire rained down from orbit, striking the rocks where the Starhawk had been hidden. The explosion turned the night into blinding daylight. The ship shook as Ethan pulled hard on the controls, weaving through the chaos. Behind them, entire mountains split apart from the bombardment. The Dominion didn't just want to kill, they wanted to erase. Seraphis closed her eyes, whispering an ancient prayer. So much destruction for fear of a voice. Yeah, Ethan muttered. Empires are good at silencing the truth. They sped toward the far side of the moon, where the map showed ruins buried under sand. Lyra pointed out the window. There, the towers. Tall spires rose from the ground like blackened fingers reaching for the sky. Once they must have been beautiful, crystal and steel humming with life. Now they were cracked, burned, and half-buried by centuries of storms. Ethan landed the ship roughly on the edge of the ruins. Dust swirled as the ramp lowered. We don't have much time, he said. Let's move. Seraphis stepped out first, the wind catching her silver hair. She touched the nearest tower and the metal pulsed faintly beneath her fingers, as if recognizing her. It still remembers my voice, she whispered. Ethan watched the radar. The Dominion wasn't far. Fighters were descending fast. Make it quick, Your Majesty, he said. We've got company. She began to sing. The sound was soft at first, barely a whisper. Then it grew, filling the air with a resonance that made the very ground hum. The tower lit up, lines of blue energy running up its sides. Her voice carried through the ruins, echoing between the broken stones. Lyra clutched Ethan's arm. She's calling them, she said. Who? Ethan asked. Everyone, the girl whispered. The light shot into the sky, a beam so bright it pierced the clouds. Across distant worlds, forgotten colonies, and slave camps, old receivers flickered to life. The Queen's voice reached them all. My people still live. The Dominion lied. We are not lost. Rise. The stars are ours again. Ethan stared, awe filling his chest. You did it, he said. But before Seraphis could reply, a warning siren blared. The scanners flashed red. Multiple contacts. Close range, Ethan shouted. They're here. Dominion gunships descended like dark angels, weapons primed. The Queen's song faltered and the tower's light dimmed. Keep singing, Ethan yelled. I'll buy you time. He sprinted back to the Starhawk, firing up its cannons. Plasma bolts tore through the air, slamming into the enemy ships. The ground shook under the force of each impact. Seraphis continued to sing, her voice rising even as explosions thundered around her. The Dominion soldiers landed in waves. Ethan took cover behind a wrecked turret, firing until his blaster overheated. He shouted into the comms, Lyra, get inside and lock the door. But the girl's voice came through, steady and brave. I'm staying with Mama. Ethan gritted his teeth. She's got your spirit, Your Majesty, he muttered under his breath. A plasma bolt hit near the base of the tower. The structure cracked, but the beam of light flared brighter than ever. Seraphis's voice grew stronger, so strong that even the Dominion soldiers hesitated, their weapons lowering as if the sound itself touched their memories. One of them shouted, It's her! The Queen lives! Ethan saw doubt spreading among them. The power of truth was working faster than any weapon. Then, with a roar, the Starhawk's cannons fired their last volley, blowing apart the nearest cruiser. The blast painted the sky orange, lighting up the Queen's glowing silhouette. Seraphis raised her arms toward the heavens, her final note ringing through the battlefield. The light exploded upward, carrying her message to every world enslaved by fear. And as the enemy fled before that voice, Ethan looked at the burning horizon and whispered, That's it. That's the fire they'll never put out. The Queen turned to him, smiling through exhaustion. You gave them hope, human. You gave me hope. He smiled faintly. Just returning the favor. Overhead, the sky blazed with the reflection of burning ships and the birth of something greater than war, a rebellion. The stars had never looked so bright. From the shattered cliffs of the moon, the fire from the destroyed Dominion ships burned like fallen suns. The air shimmered with smoke and echoes of Seraphis's final song, still pulsing faintly through the wrecked relay towers. The Starhawk lay wounded among the ruins, its hull scorched, its wings half buried in ash, but somehow it still stood. Ethan Cole sat on the ramp staring into the horizon. His armor was cracked, his arm burned, his face streaked with soot. Yet his eyes were steady. He had survived what no human ever should have. He had stood against an empire, and won. Behind him, Seraphis approached, her long silver hair tangled with dust. Even exhausted, she moved with quiet dignity. Lyra clung to her hand, her violet eyes wide with wonder. Ethan turned his head slightly. "You two okay?" Lyra nodded. "We're safe because of you." He chuckled weakly. "No, kid. Because of us." Seraphis's gaze drifted toward the horizon where her signal still glowed faintly in the sky. "They heard it," she whispered. "Every colony, every slave world, every outpost that still remembers my people. They heard the truth. And they'll fight now," Ethan said quietly. "You gave them a reason." She looked down at him. "No, you did. Without you, my voice would have stayed in that cage." Ethan exhaled slowly, staring at the smoke curling into the stars. "Maybe, but I didn't do it for crowns or rebellions." "Then why?" she asked softly. He met her gaze, his voice steady. "Because a little girl cried for her mother." Seraphis's eyes softened, shimmering with unshed tears. "You're a strange creature, human." He smiled faintly. "So they keep telling me." Hours later, the sky changed again, this time not with fire but with light. Hundreds of small ships appeared across the horizon. Some were rusted cargo haulers, others old mining vessels or repurposed freighters. They bore the colors of a dozen worlds, each one answering the Queen's call. Lyra gasped. "Look, they came!" Ethan stood, squinting at the fleet forming above. "Well, I'll be damned. That's one hell of a rescue party." A voice crackled through the radio, a rough, accented tone. "This is Captain Mora of the Free Colonies. We received your signal. Is it true? The Queen lives?" Seraphis stepped forward, pressing the comm switch. "I live. And the Dominion's chains are not unbreakable. If you stand with us now, together we can bring back the light." Silence, followed for a heartbeat, and then cheers erupted through every channel. Dozens of ships began broadcasting the same phrase. "For the Queen, for the stars." Ethan smiled. "Guess you just started a war, Your Majesty." "Not a war," she corrected. "A rebirth." But the moment of hope was short-lived. A sensor alarm beeped inside the Starhawk. Ethan rushed to the console. "Dominion reinforcements, bigger ones this time, they're coming fast." Seraphis looked up at the sky. "If they find me, they'll burn every rebel ship that answered the call." Ethan's jaw tightened. He stared at the radar, then at the cracked hull of his ship. "Then they won't find you." Her eyes widened. "Ethan, what are you saying?" He grinned faintly, though his voice was low. "You take Lyra and those ships. I'll lead the Dominion away." "No," she said firmly, stepping closer. "I won't abandon you again. You saved me. Both of us." Ethan met her eyes, calm and resolute. "Seraphis, you're a queen. The galaxy needs you alive. Me? I'm just a pilot with more guts than sense." She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "You can't fight them alone." He smiled gently. "You said humans burn bright in the dark. Guess I'll prove it." Lyra ran to him, hugging his leg. "Please, don't go." He knelt, placing a hand on her small shoulder. "Hey, heroes don't always win, kid, but someone's got to give others the chance to." Seraphis touched his face, trembling. "Ethan Cole, your name will never be forgotten." He placed her hand over his heart. Then promise me one thing. Build a galaxy where no child has to beg for help again." She nodded slowly, her tears falling. "I swear it." Moments later, the Starhawk roared back to life. The engines screamed, pushing the battered ship into the sky. The rebel fleet followed Seraphis in the opposite direction, heading toward the outer systems. From the cockpit, Ethan glanced once more at their fading signal. "Take care of her," he whispered. Then he turned his ship toward the oncoming darkness. The Dominion fleet appeared like a tidal wave of metal, hundreds of warships spreading across the stars. Ethan grinned, flipping the ship's comms open. "Attention, Dominion scum! This is Ethan Cole, the human you failed to kill." He fired the ship's last remaining missiles, drawing their attention as dozens of enemy vessels turned to pursue him. Plasma beams lit the void around him, but he flew straight through them, fearless. In his final moments, Ethan didn't see death. He saw the galaxy alive again, voices rising in defiance, worlds joining hands, a child smiling under a free sky. As the Dominion closed in, he whispered, "For the girl who cried, and for the hope she gave back to the stars." The Starhawk's engines flared white, vanishing into the enemy's center in a blinding light that shattered the night. Far away, aboard the lead rebel ship, Seraphis felt the tremor through space. She closed her eyes, holding Lyra close. "He made his choice," she whispered. "And that choice will echo through eternity." Lyra looked up, her small hand clutching her mother's. "Will we see him again?" Seraphis smiled softly. "He's among the stars now, and every time you look at the sky, you'll see his fire.